Hi, ladies and gentlemen. It's Dr. Julio Novoa. So this is my follow-up to my commentary from the Australian J&J pelvic mesh lawsuits and their agreement to pay $300 million in settlements to over 11,000 women. So I was very happy that they were able to do that, but I also said that was a drop in the bucket related to the true compensation that should be given to all women who suffered with pelvic mesh and its complications. So let me touch base today with a little bit of current events. As of 2 days ago, on February 21st, the United States Supreme Court rejected an appeal, or rejected to hear an appeal made by Johnson & Johnson associated with a $302 million lawsuit against them, brought by the state of California for specifically deceptive marketing associated with pelvic meshes. Now, the J&J asked the U.S. Supreme Court to hear their appeal based on the fact that they thought that the California laws, business laws, are vague on the subject matter, and that they were being unfairly treated in the particular issues related to the pelvic mesh. Well, I call BS on that one to begin with, but nevertheless, let's just move on. That was not the only lawsuit that has been settled related to J&J and pelvic meshes. We are aware that J&J also settled other lawsuits with combined lawsuits in 45 states in the District of Columbia, amounting to $117 million. So right there, it's close to $500 million that have been settled by J&J. Now, to get an idea of how severe or how far-reaching these particular issues were, J&J has had more than 100,000 lawsuits filed against them related to pelvic meshes. So in comparison to the issues that were going on in Australia, which involve 11,000 women, we noticed that here there's almost 10 times that in number just with one particular company, just J&J, related to pelvic meshes. Now, we also know that there are dozens of other, many other companies that were also offering pelvic meshes, and all of them got out of that particular market. And finally, just a few years ago, the FDA banned all pelvic meshes in the United States. Number one, because they couldn't be proven to be safe, and number two, proven to be effective. So how they got around all of these issues, and you understand, is the fact that the companies that made the pelvic meshes were relying on providing these particular materials on flawed data, which was grandfathered in from flawed screening by the FDA. Based on histories with hernia meshes, so we all know what's going on there. And again, we always go back to the same situation. Biological implants are inherently dangerous for a significant number of patients. In the case of pelvic meshes, we're looking at 3 to 17% of women that had pelvic meshes placed are at risk of having severe complications. What's worse is these complications get worse as the patient ages. What many people don't understand is that these materials do not stay inert for the rest of a patient's life. These materials, polypropylene, polyethylene, and polyethylene terephthalate, degrade over time. Now, it takes a long time, takes 15 to 20 years for them to start to degrade, but as a product, as a biological implant degrades, it becomes a new type of foreign body to the human body. So whatever whatever immune response it had during the against the original material, it will change over time as the material itself changes. And we understand that this foreign body reaction is associated with mesh implant illness, which is a subcategory, as I've said before. Mesh implant illness is a subcategory of the autoinflammatory syndrome induced by adjuvants, or ASIA. Now, let's put another thing out there. J&J argued that, California argued that J&J should have to pay because of deceptive marketing, which I happen to agree with. But let's not stop understanding or laying blame where blame needs to be laid. Okay? What we're saying here is very simple. Doctors knew, again, doctors knew that these devices produced serious, catastrophic, and irreversible complications to women for years and even more than a decade. And they still put it in women without consideration of their consequences and without the ability to manage the complications or to remove the implants. So you can blame J&J, as you should, for what they did in marketing pelvic meshes. But you must blame the doctors that put these devices in their patients, because they have equal blame, especially when we started seeing those complications. I at one time put in urethral and pelvic meshes. I did, because I read the data that was presented to me and I felt that this was a very good product. But within 1 year, within 1 to 2 months of placing just a few of the devices, I realized that the complication rate was greater than 10%. And I stopped right then and there. I stopped because I could see in my own patients what pelvic meshes were doing. And from then on, I refused to put pelvic mesh in any patients or recommend that it be placed. What's adding insult to injury is that gynecologists and urogynecologists are still placing urethral meshes in patients and causing serious problems to a significant number of women that are having problems with the urethral meshes eroding into their bladder, eroding into the bladder next, causing problems that the patient can no longer have intercourse. Then let's put that aside for a second. The chronic pelvic pain, chronic pain syndromes, and the fact of the matter that they are also part of the mesh implant illness or Asia effect. I could just go on for hours related to these particular issues. Doctors cannot be allowed to wash their hands of their involvement or culpability in this particular situation related to pelvic meshes, because they're still doing it today. They're still putting in meshes today, urethral meshes, and justifying it because they're saying that the studies that they're doing don't show that's a serious complication rate. It is serious enough that if it was any other type of problem, they would stop doing it, but they're not, because it's too easy to place urethral meshes and hide behind the data that's not being studied. That's the key. The data is not being collected, despite the fact that there's patients suffering because of it. We put that aside again, and you see that the same thing is happening with hernia meshes. Doctors are putting in hernia meshes with catastrophic outcomes related to it. The only way that things are going to change is with these multi-million and hopefully multi-billion-dollar lawsuits where these huge pharmaceutical companies and medical manufacturing companies lose billions because of their culpability in the harming of men and women, because their patients and their doctors didn't know all of the information, but mostly their doctors should have known better, and they should be sued as well. So that's my comment for the day. Thanks so much for watching. If you don't believe what I'm saying, go to YouTube and look up pelvic meshes and urethral meshes, and listen to the commentaries made by these experts that are urogynecologists and gynecologists of how they learned so much through the decades of how to improve the meshes. But what you don't take into consideration, that what they did was place meshes that destroyed women's lives. And that's how they learned, because they treated women as guinea pigs and washed their hands as if that was part of the learning curve. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, everybody.